Welcome to our Career Coach webinar, Understanding and Navigating the Various Career Paths in Supply Chain. My name is Kathleen Schroeder, and I'm the Director of Membership here at APICS. Before we begin, I'd like to run through a few details. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at apics.org/careercoach. At the end of the presentation, we will have time for a question and answer session. If you look at the toolbar on your screen, you'll see a questions box. To ask your question at any time during the presentation, simply type in the box and click send. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Rodney Apple. Rodney is the founder and president of SCM Talent Group, LLC, a national supply chain recruiter and executive search firm that recruits across the end-to-end supply chain discipline. Rodney has been working in professional recruiting for many years and has a wealth of knowledge and experiences that he generously shares as our own APICS Career Coach. Everybody, please give a warm welcome to Rodney Apple. Rodney, you may begin.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Thanks, everyone, for attending today. We're going to cover understanding and navigating the various career paths in supply chain. I'm going to first get into a quick introduction about my background and then move into how you can access prior Career Coach webinars and white papers that we've done over the last going on 3 years. And then I'm going to break this down into kind of 3 core sections, talk about the different types of career paths within supply chain management. If you're new to supply chain or maybe you haven't worked in different areas of supply chain, we'll get into kind of how you get started and the thought process that goes into that, goal planning and so forth. And then lastly, we'll talk about once you get your foot in the door, what are some techniques and tactics that you need to deploy in efforts to advance and accelerate your career in supply chain management. So with that being said, just a quick introduction. Again, 22 years in recruiting since I've gotten out of college. The last 17 plus have been in end-to-end supply chain, with a good portion of that time on the corporate side with Coca-Cola, the Home Depot, Kimberly-Clark, and a few other large corporations when I was based in Atlanta. SCM Talent Group works across several core practice areas that expand upon the supply chain discipline, supply chain management in itself, so folks that work across different disciplines. You've got your logistics and transportation, global sourcing, procurement, planning. We do a lot in the manufacturing sector, especially with materials management related positions, quality continuous improvement, offer different services, including retained executive search and contingency. And then we work across a lot of industries, primarily focused on the shipper side, so companies that do manufacturing, retail, wholesale, and we also work with some service providers too, and in particular, third-party logistics companies. If we're not connected, feel free to send me an invite. Here's the link to my LinkedIn, my email, as well as Twitter handle, and would love to connect with those that I'm not connected with yet. You can access all of our prior Career Coach webinars. You can replay them, and you can also access the white papers that we put together, as I said, over the last 3 years. Various topics that cover most aspects of professional and career development, apics.org/careercoach. And be sure to check out the magazine. I've started this past year as the author for the new department called Professional Development. I'll be sharing related articles and tips and advice through the magazine, which comes out every other month, both digital as well as print. Okay, so to start out with, I'm going to break down supply chain, the various career paths, and give you a good understanding of what that looks like. I like to think of supply chain as a function or discipline that has probably the most career paths that exist with any other function. Having been doing this for 17 plus years, I've certainly worked across all of these functions and disciplines, and it's just an exciting place to be, especially right now. I remember back at Home Depot in 2002, I was tapped with building their very first supply chain department and got super excited about it back then. And I knew back then I was going to stay in that area for the rest of my career in terms of recruitment. And it's been very good to me, and it's been a pleasure to see, to help so many people, having filled over, well over 1,000 positions in supply chain, just follow their careers, and just to see the different places they've gone in their careers. Just a quick story dating back to that time at Home Depot. We brought in an analyst, gotten his MBA in supply chain from University of Tennessee, and just staying in touch with people like that. He went on to run logistics for Apple for North America, and is now a SVP of inventory management at Target. And he's done a great job with his career. And there's other folks too that I've kept in touch with from those days. And I'm going to share some of their stories too. I mean, some of their tactics and techniques, because they all have very similar, I wouldn't say backgrounds, but things they've done early on in their career and throughout their career that have helped them to position themselves in the right place for the right opportunities, building out their networks and things like that. And I'm going to kind of share their commonalities, because I think these top performers, have got a game plan, and they do very well when it comes to executing that game plan in terms of their, their career goals and so forth. So supply chain touches every industry. I won't go through the whole list here, but CPG, retail, wholesale, pretty much any industry, including in government. You've got your shipper side, primarily folks that are on that industry side, and then you've got the service providers that are helping those types of companies, providing different types of service, from third-party logistics to even the fourth-party logistics companies, and all the various modes of transportation in terms of your carriers. You've got plenty of consulting companies, ranging from your independent consultants to mom and pops to small niche boutique consulting companies that might work within one or more areas within supply chain management. Plenty of technology providers. That's a very, very hot area, and it's been really neat to watch the technology evolve over the years, whether it's a warehouse management system provider like Manhattan Associates, for example. You've got transportation management and a whole host of other technology providers. Associations that are geared towards supply chain, there's several of those, APICS, of course, and then you've got companies that do training. There's plenty of universities that are offering up supply chain degree programs, staffing and executive search firms like myself, and plenty more. And then from a functional perspective, it's very broad. As you know, it's supply chain management. I like to think of those coordination across those different functional areas. And then, as we've talked about, logistics, transportation, your sourcing, procurement, the whole planning cycle, from forecasting demand to production planning, supply planning, inventory management, and so forth. Within manufacturing, I like to think of, on the manufacturing side, you've got supply chain is kind of within those four walls, or within that manufacturing network, getting the raw materials in, getting them staged and into production, and then warehoused, and then finally out to the end customer. Quality and continuous improvement. There are a lot of people that serve in those types of capacities, where they're constantly focused on process development and process improvement and eliminating waste and things of that nature. A lot of folks in customer service, warehousing and distribution. There's a whole reverse side of the supply chain when products are coming back from the customer. Sustainability touches supply chain and many other kind of support functions that we'll get into in here in just a few minutes. But if you break it all down, I like to think that you've got deliver, buy, make, and plan across the logistics, purchasing, manufacturing, and planning. Those are really the core functions. Those are the core functions that we support here at SCM Talent Group. And you can go down a rabbit hole when you talk about each of these functions. There's lots and lots of different career paths and job titles that exist across these four areas. As we talked about, spans numerous industries, the service providers, and then you have to look at things from looking at the company itself. When you break it down, you've got publicly held companies, privately held companies, nonprofits, just like APICS, and then you've got private equity and venture capital companies that are gathering investments and putting them in, and whether they're a part owner or a full owner of 100%, those companies are typically in the business of helping companies improve and to become more profitable, so they can get a return on their investment at the end. Company sizes are going to range again from your startups and small mom and pops to mid-size or mid-cap companies to large multinational corporations. So as you explore career paths, you definitely want to keep the company sizes in mind as well. In addition to all of that, there are lots of different business support functions when it comes to supply chain management. If you're on a service provider side, you could be selling supply chain or logistics or transportation related services. Get into the account management side of that. Again, there's customer service. Plenty of people in human resources and recruiting like myself on the corporate side that support the business. Of course, finance, accounting, the technology side with information technology, helping to implement systems internally within a company. There's sustainability or health and safety, environmental, especially on the manufacturing side. And then again, there's typically, we've built a lot of continuous improvement teams lately, and it seems to be a very hot area to be in, whether it's Lean or Six Sigma or a combination of thereof. That's another great area to be in as well. So as you can see, when you break things down, and you can break it down even further than this, there are just an enormous amount of opportunities that you can go in, and it can be a bit overwhelming, especially as you're starting out, just trying to figure out, wow, which area do I pick? Which type of company do I pick? So we're going to get into that. And just real quick, though, looking at some of the various job titles across some of these core functions in supply chain, everything from the C-level, the top level, Chief Supply Chain Officer, and down, you've got plenty of positions that kind of work across that supply chain. In looking at the continuous improvement area and quality, there's different types of positions within that particular area. Sourcing, procurement, you can see the job titles there. Again, you've got CPO. You've got I've seen the CPO title in several companies, especially that have large procurement spends. A plethora of opportunities in planning. There's all kinds of areas in planning. Again, manufacturing and logistics. So those are just some of the example titles. I've scraped these from our website, so just to kind of break those out. So now that we've kind of covered just some of the types of career paths, they're, again, very broad when it comes to most other functions in the company. Getting started is a bit overwhelming, so let's just talk about that. So when you look at any type of career, you look at any type of person that's been very successful, there's no such thing. There's I guess the old term might be career ladders. You have to go in this linear format of starting at an analyst to a manager to a director to a VP, and that's I don't think that's the case anymore. I think companies are very diverse these days. They've expanded globally, and there's just a lot of different things you can do and steps you're going to have to take. Sometimes you might take 2 steps forward. You could take a step back in order for you to get down that right path and ultimately achieve the top goal you have in your career. Now, whether that's to be, to run a warehouse or to be the top person in procurement, that's totally up to you. But just know that, you're going to take some movement sideways, backwards, forwards, and that's the typical course ultimately to get to where you want to be. It's not an easy road, but there are some tactics that we'll get into to help you achieve those goals. I think before you begin a career, and this especially applies to folks that are still in college or getting ready to graduate, you really have to figure out the type of work that you're good at and especially enjoy doing. Those 2 things are paramount, and you really can't have one without the other. You can be very good at something and hate it, and you'll be miserable, and vice versa. So if you can just do some research and figure out, what that first step in your career looks like, that can really help you get you off to a good start. Know that sometimes you may think you know the right direction you want to go in, you get into the job, and you find that it's just not the type of work that you do. So you're going to make those steps, you're going to make those mistakes, and the key thing is to just overcome, and then that helps you. Sometimes you have to, dip your toes in the water before you really figure out what you like and what you don't like. Then again, there are people that just they know what they want to do, and they have their mind set to it, and they go after it. So try to understand at a bare minimum, the kind of work you might like to do and enjoy doing and excel at, of course. LinkedIn is a fantastic place to do research when it comes to jobs, industries, and companies, the internet in general. APICS has some great resources as well on this subject. I think the best thing you can do, though, is to simply start building your network and reaching out to people, joining associations, not just joining, but attending their chapter meetings every month, going to some of the major events and conferences and so forth. Because the more you talk to people, people love to talk about themselves. Here in recruiting, I tell our new recruiters coming in, the easiest way and the best way you can learn about what people do in these different types of jobs is to simply ask them questions. Hey, what is that? What does that mean? What do you do? And every time we do a phone screen, if we don't know something, people are always happy to share and talk about themselves. That's one thing people just like to do. So bear in mind, you've got an enormous network out there that you can tap into by using simple tools like LinkedIn and joining associations as well. And if you're not quite sure what kind of work you want to do or what you're really good at, there's plenty of strengths finder exercises out there on the internet. If you're still in college, they'll probably have some of those in your career center, personality tests, skill surveys, and things like that that can really help shape the kind of work that you might be good at and enjoy doing. Another thing you want to do is be a voracious reader when it comes to supply chain news, industry news, trade journals, and things like that. We use a tool called Feedly, feedly.com, and I've got a subscription to every single blog that's out there in supply chain. Maybe not everyone, but all of the primary blogs. There's an app on my phone. I've got it on my desktop, and it's just, when you're having coffee in the morning, it's just a simple, easy way to scan through the headlines, see what kind of articles have been published on every facet of supply chain. If you know you want to be in like distribution, there's definitely some trade magazines and blogs that are dedicated just to distribution. So sign up for things that you're interested in, and then just keep tabs of those articles coming in. But pay attention to trends too. It's very important. There's a lot of things going on with automation and artificial intelligence, so you want to keep that in mind, because there's going to be some jobs out there that might not exist like they do today in the future. So pay attention to trends, see what industries are thriving, which industries are growing, what industries are very stable. I'd like to think that consumer goods is one of the safer industries. People are always going to need things like food and toilet paper and things like that. So you've got to put those things into thought as well as you explore the different career paths. Ultimately, though, you're going to be looking for those high growth areas and up and coming. People 20 years ago, Amazon, I guess, has turned 20, and just thinking back then where they started as kind of an online bookstore, and look towards where we're at today, and just think about if you would have invested just $1,000, what that would look like right now. I saw a chart on that, and it was ridiculous. So you want to look out for those kind of opportunities, because if you can get in with a high growth company, that is how you can that's probably the best way you can accelerate your career in supply chain. Having done all this research, then you want to start making some decisions on, okay, the types of functions I might want to go into. Do I want to go with a shipper? Do I want to go with a service provider? What size company? What might have the best cultural fit? Obviously factor in geography and things like that. And then you want to just boil it down to targeted companies that you want to explore and so forth. And that way you can get things at least targeted. And if you can do that and do all these things when you come out of college especially, you'll be far ahead of other people that might just wait till they get out of college. Oh, I need to start getting on LinkedIn. I need to start looking for a job. You want to do these things in advance. Another thing, just a simple exercise, and you think about these questions as you're looking at the screen. Especially if you're starting out, or maybe you're not in a job that you're in right now, or a company. It helps to go back and what am I really good at? What am I not good at? What industries am I most interested in? Again, what's poised for growth? Sometimes it just helps to go through an exercise of writing things down, kind of put it maybe into a pros and cons format. Just doing that, setting time aside to really think and strategically about what you want to do is a great exercise. No matter if you're starting your career, or if you're at a place where this isn't my home, this isn't where I'm going to be building my career, this isn't the right function for me. The worst thing you can do is be miserable in a job and stick it out, and next thing you know, you're kind of locked into that area. So take time, actually better yet, schedule time to evaluate, where you're at based on your career goals, and then make some corrective action plans if you need to, which we'll get into here in a minute. Speaking of goals, I go through this on every presentation because it is so important. We talked about the folks I worked with 17 years ago starting out as analysts, and now they're, senior executives at some very large Fortune 100 companies. I can guarantee you they had goals set up, and they still do to this day. So it's very important not just to put these goals together, but to write them down. I'm a big fan of the SMART goals, with having very well-defined, specific goals in terms of what you want to achieve. Make sure they are measurable in terms of a time frame or whatnot, achievable, relevant, and et cetera. And you want to make sure at the very end that you're celebrating each of those goals. It certainly helps and to build that momentum. But you also want to think about, where do I want to be at my highest point of my career, and then think in terms of career building blocks. Every single job that you take, or skill that you develop, or system that you learn, or it could be a certification that you obtain, that you study, pass the test, and obtain, like APICS certifications, for example. Think of those as career building blocks. So and they all lead up to that highest place that you'd like to get to in your career. And then make sure that every type of goal you put in place is important. It's going to create that value, that's going to create that building block that you can stack, just like a stack of Legos, that ultimately gets to that finished completion point where you want to be in your career. And it's very important also to write down these career goals, make sure they're visible in front of you in places like your desk, tape them to your desk, or a mirror on the refrigerator as constant reminders. And then put those necessary career action steps into place, schedule them into your calendars and so forth, so you have constant reminders on what you need to do in terms of reviewing and tracking progress and celebrating that goal achievement. Of course, I won't go into detail here. We've done plenty of webinars on these topics, including most recently, and in the APICS magazine too. Optimizing your resume and your LinkedIn profile, they're your two top marketing tools, and you're going to need to have these in top condition, ready to deploy. Your resume is something you use more of an outbound, sending out to people basis. LinkedIn is a tool that you use both inbound with recruiters contacting you, and when you network with people, people can see your profile. So very important to keep these two tools fully optimized at all times, so you don't miss out on any opportunities. Another big thing, I look at, again, the people that have accelerated their careers and have achieved their goals. They all had one thing in common, a lot of things in common, but they all had having a strong network in common. I know a lot of people they don't like to network. You've got, the introverts that you talk about networking and it's something that they're just not excited. They can't get excited about. But there's been plenty of studies conducted. Actually, I pulled this from a major study where it kind of shows on the left-hand side, that your performance over time goes up. Compensation goes up. Promotional opportunities are going to go up when you focus on developing a large and open network. You're active on LinkedIn. You're attending supply chain association meetings, chapter meetings, conferences. Perhaps you've become a subject matter expert. You've done a good job of branding yourself. People know who you are. You're speaking at some of these conferences down the road in your career. And it's a fantastic way to get recruited and to build out your career. And a lot of time, and the saying is true. It's not about what you know, but who you know. It's very, very true. I mean, you got to know things, and you've got to be able to have that experience. But you also have to have different pockets of networks, and those could be in targeted companies. They could, a myriad of different areas. It doesn't have to be work-related either. It could be, if you're active in a church or if you're active in a nonprofit. It's just fantastic ways to meet people. You'll never know where you're going to meet someone. So try to keep that open network and make the right connections, especially with people that you admire, that have gone down the same type of career path that you would like to go to. Those could be potential mentors, and again, we'll get into that here in a few minutes. And just, bear in mind that if you're going to kind of shut down and keep a small network, I don't want to get on LinkedIn, I'm happy with my job. Those things are fine too, but the odds of your success and also moving up quicker are going to be diminished if you don't develop relationships in different areas and having a positive network. So very important to do that. And LinkedIn makes it super easy to do that these days. APICS makes it easy on their end as well with all the chapters and events that they put on. So so get out there and do that. It's a great way to discover the types of career paths as well, because you're going to meet like-minded people. LinkedIn makes it super easy to connect with people that you've gone to school with in the past that might work in supply chain that are years ahead of you. That's where I would start if I was coming out of college. Definitely connect with alumni, especially those that work in your target companies and in supply chain, folks that are in the same association. And then there's other tools like Meetup, Eventbrite, where you can find opportunities to connect as well. And we've got another white paper we've done on this topic, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's called the Master the Art of Networking. And making connections is one thing, but staying connected and ultimately adding value, asking the question, how can I help you with your career? How can I help you with your job now? Or just being of the mindset, the more you give, the more you receive. So be sure to be an active networker and not just someone that's going to make connections and never ever connect with the people that that you have in terms of digital contacts. So get out there and ask what you can do to help them. And that typically will be reciprocated down the road. And ultimately, what you're trying to do is what we talked about a minute ago, is elevating your personal brand. Someone that is known in the industry, for being an expert. You can get there simply by putting out content in different areas like LinkedIn or some of these trade journals that match, where your career path is, volunteering at chapter events, speaking at conferences, and so forth. It's a great way to kind of help elevate your personal brand. Another common attribute that top performers have is having a mentor. A mentor is a wise and trusted counselor or teacher, and mentee is obviously a person that's guided by the mentor. Before you set out, though, you definitely want to put some strategic thought into, what do I need or what do I want out of a mentor. You want to start identifying potential candidates for a mentor, ideally folks that might work in the same area of the supply chain that you'd like to work in or the same industry that you'd like to work in, and someone that's already achieved the career level that either you're at or would like to be at in the near future. They can certainly help map a good path in terms of helping you build out your network, making introductions to people, telling you what skills you might need, the roadblocks, the hurdles that you can try to avoid, maybe how to go around those roadblocks, and other advice to help you accelerate your career in supply chain. When you do set up a mentor, it's very important to, to have a plan, a written plan, to have meetings set up, and show up for those meetings on time, and fully leverage every minute you get with that mentor, and of course offer that individual help as well. Again, it's a two-way street. It's not just a one-way street when it comes to mentorships. Other things you can do when it comes to accelerating your career. We've talked about this a little bit, but again, seeking out those high-growth companies. If it's a public corporation, that's very simple to do. You can look at their financials over time, and again, paying close attention to trends. If you happen to download the Feedly app, it's a great tool for seeing which industries are thriving, which jobs are kind of going away through automation. You definitely don't want to set a career path that gets you into a dead-end job that's going to be taken over by a robot. Continue to look for companies that have robust training, professional development opportunities, that have an established mentoring program that can help facilitate that as soon as you get in the door. Look for companies that have strong talent development programs, such as leadership development programs, where you may come into a 1 or 2 or 3 year rotational program and work across different areas of the supply chain. Spoke with a guy from Verizon yesterday that did just that, and worked in 3 different rotations, had recently gotten out of it a couple years ago, and now is kind of leading some supply chain strategy for Verizon. So if you can find those types of opportunities and those types of companies, they take talent very seriously, and these are excellent ways for you to get into an area where you can work across different functions, gain those skills and experience, but also, just as important, you're meeting different people internally across the supply chain organization to help kind of facilitate and build and nurture those relationships. Very, very, very important to make sure you find a company that has a strong culture that aligns with your values, your core values and goals. That's a big thing for us when we're recruiting. We always try to find out what the company culture looks like. It's like, you can find the perfect job, have the perfect boss, and then ultimately, if the culture isn't a fit, eventually you're going to want to get out of there. So make sure you pay close attention to that. I'm a big fan of companies that are constantly innovating. We talked about Amazon. I mean, they are big-time innovators, and they're always focused on continuous improvement and just finding a better way to improve something. So find those kind of companies, and then the companies that are the ones that are stagnant or declining. A lot of times they just kind of lose sight. They get caught up in the status quo. So you definitely want to focus on companies that are changing and evolving and staying ahead of the curve. And another good thing, if you've got a target list of companies, go dive into some of these profiles of people that work in the different types of jobs that you're looking for. Study some of the profiles. Do you see rapid advancement? Are people getting promoted, every 1, 2, 3 years? That's always a good sign. Or are you seeing people that might be there a year and they're no longer there? And if you see that, you've got the company probably has some kind of a problem with its retention. So study those profiles, connect with those individuals, try to learn more about their backgrounds, and also, obviously, if you're pursuing opportunities, that's a great place to start when it comes to trying to make those connections, relationships, and getting that foot in the right door. Once your foot's in the door, what are some things you can do? Obviously, it's all about adding value to your employer. This actually is not quite obvious to some, but you want to be able to come into a place where you can go in and understand not only your performance objectives, but what it takes to ultimately achieve promotions. So always strive to go above and beyond what is asked of you, and that's what forms your accomplishments, and which is the same thing as the word value. You want to be able to track these throughout every step of your career. This is what you're going to use to highlight and beef up your resume and LinkedIn profile, but also to speak to in an interview. So it's very important to keep track of these achievements, to go above and beyond your goals, but also to be the first guy or gal that raises their hand whenever you're asked to volunteer for a project. Maintaining a positive attitude is very important as well. And obviously, you want to continue with training and learning as much as you can. Again, focus on those building blocks. I want to be a chief supply chain officer. What do I need to do to get there? And then have that map and have those goals and action plans aligned. Bake them into your calendar to review to make sure you stay on track. Ultimately, realizing that it's all about contributing value. Those that create the value, not just do what they're told, are the ones that climb the ladder the quickest. Speaking of climbing the ladder, when some of this stuff's going to be obvious to people that have been in their career for a while, but it's your boss can hold the keys to that promotion. And so if you want to do whatever it takes to make your boss look good. And so clearly communicating your career goals is very important as well, on top of understanding what you need to do. in terms of your performance objectives. So always strive to be that top performer and to be a high performer at your company. Maintain those accomplishments as we've talked about. Very critical that we quantify those achievements as well in terms of it's a dollar sign or percentage and whatnot. Going above and beyond is one of the quickest ways to climb the ladder, and getting that training is critical, as long as it matches up with your career path. I get a lot of questions, and this is kind of the core of the topic here, when it comes to how to pivot your career in supply chain. I think a lot of folks will get into one area of the supply chain, and maybe they burn out or they just get to a place where they can't go any higher. And so what are some tactics you can do, when it comes to changing departments or functions internally? And I think this comes down really to number one, are you in a company or an environment that allows you to do that? I know some companies, whether they're large or small, but especially large companies, you can go in sometimes into a place and really get locked in. Let's say it's into transportation, or you're in warehousing. You've been doing that for 5-10 years, and then it can become very difficult. I'd like to work in procurement to make that pivot. So there's some things that you can do, and I think it all starts with having a good manager, but engaging that manager for your support. Your manager, again, can hold the keys to not only promotions within your department, but help facilitate introductions to other departments and so forth. So you definitely want to get the support on that end. And in tandem, it's very important to establish relationships with individuals, and especially the leader of those departments or functions that you would like to work in. And so an easy way to do that, you can even get on LinkedIn and connect with people internally. If I was at a company, I would want to be connected to just about everyone that works in supply chain, but especially everyone in my department and the departments that I'd like to work within. Big, giant companies, you may be pretty far away from some of these people, especially if they're out in facilities across the country or in different parts of the world. So make sure you do the basic relationship building there. Offer to take them out to coffee, tea, or lunch or something like that, so you can get that critical in-person or face-to-face time that can help lead to fostering relationships and positioning yourself for a move. And be sure, after you've got the support from your manager, that you're communicating goals and your intention of moving to that new department to the person or the people that lead that different function. And then from there, it's really about just staying in touch, staying on their radar screen, but also anytime you can volunteer for a project. I know some companies I've worked at, like let's say it was Coca-Cola, we definitely had some programs where we might do some job swaps where someone would come in for a period of time into one department and swap places with an employee in another department, just to round out that cross-functional experience. But also, you need to do on your end, whatever it is to gain skills and experience that might be required for that other department too. And then so, any kind of courses you can take, whether they're online or if you go to a community college, whatever that might look like, gaining a certification that might be popular or helpful in that department can certainly help open up doors. Last thing, I opened up with talking about common traits that top performers have within supply chain, and I'm just going to kind of read through these. I've taken a lot of time to put these together. I just started thinking about all the people I've worked with, and then separating the ones that really just took off in their career, and kind of thinking about what are some things that these guys had in common. And I put a list together, and I went back and looked at their profiles. I even spoke to some of these folks on the phone. I was hoping to have one of them on the call. He had to pull out due to an emergency, but that's okay. I can certainly speak. I know I've known these guys for 15 plus years, but always learning and growing. Very important. Never get to a place where you're just stuck. And the moment you stop growing as an individual and as an employee is the moment you've hit the top there. You're probably not going to go anywhere else. So you need to maintain that attitude of always I try to learn something new every day myself, and it's important to do that. Advanced degrees I look at these folks and I went back and looked, and a lot of them have gone on to, and it might have been later in their career where they've gone on to achieve, maybe it's an online MBA, or went back and got some kind of supply chain certification. Again, it's just another way to make yourself more marketable, and many of these people in this particular class that I've studied, that I've worked with, or probably a lot of them I recruited, back when they were a lot younger. They went on to further educate themselves. They all are very analytical and just have that mindset of being a fact-based or data, making data-backed decisions. So you certainly want to embrace the technology that's out there, and especially the data that comes through that technology. They're very good when it comes to building teams, team players. They're always willing to help anyone that comes in the door. So that's that, again, showing that kind of leadership. It gets noticed, and it may not be a tangible something you get back in return, but many years later it could definitely come back full circle. And that's the importance of being a giver, not just a taker. Be willing to help people out. Great at planning and organizational skills, overachieve. They were high performers, in that top class at the companies that I worked with them at. They understand the financial levers within supply chain. I think that's a very important thing, understanding the P&L and how that works. And also, they take calculated risks. They don't just work off the gut, but again, that goes back to having data-backed decisions. Every single one of them absolutely had a mentor and have typically served as a mentor throughout their career. They're active in supply chain associations, whether it be APICS or other associations. Outstanding communicators and presenters. That's very important, especially as you climb up to the executive ranks. Very results focused. When something goes wrong, they don't make excuses. They're only coming up with a solution to overcome what went wrong. They stay positive, very nice. They have fun on the job, and they always give them themselves as well, and always soliciting feedback, coaching, mentoring others. They are active on LinkedIn. Actually, the guy that was going to help me, I mentioned it's the SVP at Target. He's super active on LinkedIn. He's always posting leadership quotes and things like that. They, again, reward performance. They acknowledge when something is done right to their employees, especially in front of their teams. Incredible work ethic, obviously, lots of integrity and morals and ethics. Very goal-driven. They write down their goals, and they put a lot of time into thinking about their career and strategizing, and that is so critical. It's really the reason I bring it up in every webinar, because without the goals, without writing them down, without having a plan, you're just going to be wandering aimlessly from job or company, and that's just, you don't want things coming to you that you have to consider. You want to go out and make things happen. And speaking of that, they go out and keep that career door open. If you can't get to a certain place at your company, you've given every chance that you can. Always have a plan B or an exit strategy. So they'll listen to opportunities that come to them. They may say no. They may offer up a referral. But at a minimum, they're trying to make those connections, build out their network, whether it be a recruiter or someone else. Keep their accomplishments very well documented. And, the folks that I know tend to be very active when it comes to, working out and just keeping that work-life balance in shape. And again, they have very strong networks and relationships with people, not just in their own company, but especially outside of their organization and different companies in different industries and so forth. So with that, looks like we've got 15 minutes for Q&A. So if we've got some questions, fire away.
Okay, yeah, we'd like to give you a chance to ask any questions. So as a reminder to submit any questions for Rodney, type in the questions box within the toolbar and click send. So I'll give everyone a few more seconds to type any questions they have. But right off the bat, we have a couple for you, Rodney. In your experience, this is a question, how important is it for a job candidate to have an APICS CPA or an APICS credential in general?
Well, you know, I look back over my career in supply chain recruitment and you know, who knows how many different job descriptions that I've looked at, and I can tell you that there are definitely some positions out there where this is typically listed on the job description as a preferred requirement. Whenever I'm kicking off a search with a hiring manager or hiring team, a lot of times it'll get brought up. You know, we would love someone that's got a certification in X, or, you know, it doesn't have to be APICS. A lot of times, I'd say most of the time it is APICS certification, but, you know, I think having those is important. And I think if all things are equal when it comes to your background and experience and qualifications versus that top person that you're competing with for the same job, you know, if you have that, I certainly think that's going to help you stand out and make you more marketable, because you know, you clearly have gone out to develop, you know, your core competencies in a certain area, to the review and study the material, but ultimately pass the test and achieve that certification. So I think it's very important. I know that, again, back to the people that I was referencing, these high performers, you know, a lot of them have gone out and achieved various certifications. You know, again, it doesn't have to be, I mean, APICS is certainly, I think, the gold standard, and I've seen that listed more often than not on various job descriptions, especially in certain areas of the supply chain. So it really depends on the area of supply chain that you're in or what you're targeting, and just making sure that that certification aligns with your ultimate goals. It needs to be helpful. Don't just go out and get 3 or 4 different certifications just to add those to your resume. That's not going to really help you if those certifications don't align with your career goals and career path that you're looking to go down.
Okay, so another question we have here. Let's see. Oh, I just lost it. I'm sorry about that. So this one, graduating soon, what's a future industry trend that may advance?
Well, that's a great question. You know, clearly there is a major tectonic shift in terms of how consumers go about purchasing products, and I'm referring to you know, retail in particular. You've seen the store closings that are out there in certain segments of retail, and it seems like Amazon in particular continues to gain market share in a lot of different of those different categories. So you know, I think e-commerce and omni-channel type companies, distribution type companies, you know, and we work with a few of those, and they are growing. They are taking market share away from some of the brick and mortar based retailers. So that area, I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I have a feeling things may get a lot worse for some of these companies and some of these segments in particular, you know, than before it gets better. So if you know, and a lot of these companies have waited way too long to jump on that online retailing or e-commerce bandwagon, and those companies are desperately trying to catch up. I can tell you that from a recruiting perspective, there are enormous amounts of openings, and there's an extremely high demand for talent in that particular area. You know, setting up e-commerce distribution or omni-channel capabilities. That's one area that's very hot. And then, you know, I mean, I think a lot of the majors in terms of corporations are doing just fine when it comes to CPG, but we're also seeing a lot of activity with, you know, private equity, venture capital, you know, trying to grow these different brands and companies, you know, with small to mid-sized companies. So, you know, industries, you know, they're going to go up and down. Oil and gas, you know, a lot of that is just supply and demand. So, you know, you have to kind of study that. I think anything to do with healthcare, with the aging demographics, That's going to be a big area when it comes to, especially when it comes to supply chain. We seem like that's an area that hasn't really matured compared to some other industries. So those are just a few that, off the top of my head that I would I would do some research on for sure. Pay close attention to.
All right, great. So another question, what tips do you have for how to evaluate recruiting firms / headhunters for supply chain jobs?
That's a really good question. I think you need to start with your network. I think it's always good, just like any you want to get a good mechanic or someone that's going to be reliable to come cut your grass, or a good lawyer, a good doctor. I mean, the first place you're going to go is go out and post. Maybe it's if it's a doctor or something, or someone to cut your grass, you might go to Facebook. But when it comes to getting a recruiting help, I think you need to look at a few different factors. You're going to have to do the research through your network. That's always good to get good referrals. So that's one place. And then when you get online, I think it's important to try to identify recruiters that align with the type of work or geography or function or industry that you're interested in. That's the thing about supply chain. When we talked about the breakdown of careers, it's the same exact thing on the recruiting side. You've got recruiters that only work with transportation carriers and 3PLs. Some just do sales and account management. Some work with very like a sustainability, or they might work with transportation only. So you kind of have to find the recruiters that align, because not all recruiters can't be everything to everyone when it comes to supply chain. It's just too broad and deep of a scope. So try to identify folks that align, whether it's functionally or industry, and geography too. While we recruit nationally, we certainly have our strong pockets, being in the Southeast. We work with a lot of companies in the Southeast, so making sure you've got some alignment there. But also, do some more research than that. I mean, I think supply chain can be a very complex field, and a lot of folks are getting into it on the recruiting side. So I think just looking at people that are pretty well established, work with established firms, those that are active on LinkedIn, and especially the ones that are posting the types of jobs that align with the kind of jobs you're pursuing. And then look, it doesn't hurt, make sure they've got good testimonials on their website and or LinkedIn profile as well. The entry point into recruiting, there's not really any kind of barriers when it comes to training and learning. So a lot of folks get into it, and a lot of people, unfortunately, just don't really follow a lot of the guidelines and best practices. And so, you want to make sure you're working with somebody that's trusted and ultimately has a good reputation.
Okay, great. And so the next question, where should I be looking for my first job, and what kinds of positions should I be pursuing?
Well, I think that goes back to the core of what we just covered is what should I be pursuing? What kind of jobs that is totally up to you. I can tell you right now that if you're in supply chain, all areas of supply chain are hiring. I would say at all levels there's a talent gap in a lot of different pockets. But ultimately, you got to figure out what kind of work you want to do, what fields or functions interest you the most, and don't just do that through online research. You've got to connect with people and understand, what do you like about your job, what do you not like about your job, what else do you wish you were doing. Ask those simple questions across the types of function you might be interested in. It's gonna really help you calibrate and understand what people do and why they like what they do. And ultimately, you can kind of use that information, that data, to shape the types of jobs you want to apply to. But I don't think you can go wrong. Any of the areas that we've talked about, whether it's on the service provider side, whether it's on the shipper side, it's totally up to you. Now, starting out, sometimes you may have to just, without having any experience, sometimes you have to kind of take a position, to get your foot in the door, start earning some income, start paying back that college tuition. And sometimes, you have to take some calculated risk and chances just to see what it's like, and you may realize, I can't stand this, and then and hopefully on the second time around you use those learnings to land in the right place. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. You control your career. No one else does. So you've got to factor that in, have the right goals, put in the right actions, be a strong performer, and all the things that we've talked about today. That all comes back to you.
Great. Okay, and so I think we have just enough time for one more question. The question we have is, they're currently in a non-supply chain career. They know what they're interested in transitioning to, but wanting to know how to take those first steps into transitioning into this supply chain industry.
Sure. Getting into supply chain, it's going to come down to, luckily, there are a lot of jobs out there and not enough people to go around. So that you have is an advantage. The disadvantage is just getting that first opportunity when you don't have the relevant skills or experience, qualifications, etc. So you have to kind of build that out. If you're in school getting a supply chain related degree, obviously that is a fantastic thing, because there are plenty of employers that are shopping around at universities for people that have supply chain degrees that have studied that material and understand the very basics. So that's one thing. And then if you're not in that kind of position to go back to school to get that relevant degree, then you can certainly look into some certification programs. Obviously, APICS offers those. That's a good way to come in, and at the same thing, you're learning basic foundation core principles of supply chain management or whatever other certification that you're looking to understand, and you're getting that certificate. That's another thing. So training, self-training and development is critical. You want to fine-tune a lot of the common and most sought-after skills in supply chain, having good analytical skills, good collaboration skills, and so forth. And then from there, it's just a matter of having a game plan, a written down game plan when it comes to a job search strategy. We've actually done a webinar on that, actually 2 of them. We refreshed it most recently a couple of months ago. It is really having a very fine-tuned plan where you've got a list of target companies. You're starting, I'd say the 80-20 rule, 80% of time should be spent on networking and making connections and relationships and getting your resume in front of the right people. 20% on the research, job posting, and things like that you kind of have to do. Put that plan in motion and execute it, knowing that you're going to have to reach out probably to a lot more people within the industry than someone that already has either education or experience. You're going to have to probably work a little bit harder to identify and land those interviews and opportunities. But ultimately, you want to convey, in an interview situation, you want to be able to convey the transferable or relevant skills and experience you've had in other positions to that employer, and how you spent time or what you've done to kind of position yourself from a self-learning perspective, and then how you would, facilitate learning and getting into that new position. So those are some things that I would do if I was trying to break into a supply chain career. You just can't apply to jobs and hope that works. You've got to have a pretty good plan that involves education, networking, and a pretty strong job search strategy that relies a lot on networking and building relationships to get your foot in the door.
Great, thank you. So I believe that's all the time we have today for questions, but the slides and webinar will be up on the APICS website in the near future for you guys to check out. We got some questions wondering when they would have access to this. So in closing, we'd like to thank our speaker, Rodney Apple, for his time today, and to all of our attendees for participating. We hope that you found this webinar to be beneficial, and please be sure to keep an eye out for future webinars on the online events page of the APICS website. This concludes today's webinar, so thank you and have a great day.